So let's go ahead and start up the show. I was going to skip the Phoebe news this week because Phoebe's going to launch on Tuesday, and most of the market stuff is already. One thing worth mentioning is that reverse engineering is basically going away. The mechanic that makes us T3 stuff will the same items have, but I didn't. Do not watch it. It was freaking terrible. It was chocked full of memes. None of the information was particularly good. Just save yourself the freaking time. And then one I didn't get a chance to watch today because I've been running around. Develops customers. There was also a presentation by so not helpful. Okay. So as I said before, the electronics, there should be 3 other groups are going to go up in price. Most likely are electronics, engineering, and propulsion. We see that the Legion electronics are already spiked today. Oh, jeez, you're such a jerk. Please.